The following video is an opinion of an opinion. Anything mentioned that isn't sourced should not be taken as fact. At the moment, I currently have a fan blowing in the room, so um, yeah, if you can hear that, deal with that. I'm British and I can't deal with 27 degrees Celsius heat. Welcome to RAOISFOTI episode 16, or as it's titled, ranting about opinions I see floating on the internet. In case you haven't noticed, I'm angled very differently. So right now, as you can see, I'm in my bedroom still, same bedroom. It's just that I'm facing a different position of my bed because it would be easier for me to have a tripod for my webcam and then just use the light tripod separately. So I just have two tripods, and this is the only time I have space. So hopefully you don't have to do a rocky camera, I guess. Unless you're here for my streams, which you are dealing with a rocky camera. I'm not going to do this all the time for streaming. If you love watching my videos, yeah, you don't have to deal with that, I guess. At least for this one. We'll see how... This is a trial run. We'll see. So the opinion I'll be ranting about is... It's a weird one. I say it's a weird one, but it's a one that's like, it's obviously stupid when you think about it longer than a few seconds, but for some reason, a lot of people think it makes sense. And I'm just like, no, this is stupid. If you think about this, this is really dumb. This is a dumb opinion that you should ever have. But like, I've seen it spouted on the internet quite often. So there's this belief in the internet if you're someone who works in the service industry, so if you're a fast food worker, so you work at McDonald's, or you're a barista at Starbucks, or you work as a grocery worker, or any kind of retail job, there's this weird sort of belief that you shouldn't be able to afford the most basic of needs if you work those jobs. So if you work in any of those jobs, you shouldn't be able to afford housing. And when I say housing, I don't mean like buying a house. I mean just having a place to rent. And just to keep in mind, right? When I say being able to afford rent, I mean being able to afford rent near the place you work, or at least somewhere close enough to the place you work where you can commute to at a reasonable time, with reasonable pace, reasonable level. You know what I mean? And being able to afford groceries. For some reason, the internet seems to think this opinion is some well thought out, smart position to have. And I just don't get it. It's so stupid when you think about it. It's like, oh, because you work these jobs, you just don't deserve to have your basic needs met. What? What? That's ridiculous to me. And don't get me wrong, I understand these positions come from people who are clearly right wing in their beliefs, because a core tenet of right wing beliefs is hierarchy. There's this belief that hierarchy is important, and however high or low you are in the hierarchy dictates what you deserve and what you don't deserve. Like I said, we're talking about housing, affording groceries, just being able to rent in the place near where you work. And it's like, right wingers just don't think that should even be possible. And I've always just thought, that's really weird they think this. And the only reason they think this is because there's this idea that these jobs are low skilled. These jobs are easy enough for people to do, and therefore those jobs aren't seen as valuable, and therefore they should be paid less because they're not valuable. But in my mind, I just think, okay, but there are real people working those jobs. And I think if you're a real person working those jobs full time, you should at least be able to be paid enough to afford the basic needs. Like, I don't know. I just feel like if you have a job, you shouldn't be struggling entirely. Unfortunately, we live in a society where there's a mad cost of living crisis. London, housing and rent is really expensive basically throughout every borough. Some boroughs it depends, but or if your housing isn't expensive, if you've just recently got new like public transport, like a new train station, your housing is probably going to start getting expensive sometime soon. To me, it's completely mind-boggling that you could work a full-time job and that somehow isn't enough for you to live on. Like, you just can't live on that. If you work a fast food restaurant, you shouldn't be able to, afford to live. I'm like, what? You can't afford to... A full-time job isn't enough for you to just afford to live. Like, what is this? How is this something that's good? This isn't good. Here's a hot take. I think if you're a person working in the KFC and Asda in central London, you should make enough money to be able to live at least around central London so you can get to work on time easily and not have to commute far out into London. There are some people who are working good jobs who then still have to commute out of London to be able to get to work. And it's just because living in London is expensive as fuck. The only people who have an advantage being in London is people who have lived in London through their parents, like me. Like, I can't imagine if I was someone who didn't have any family living in London. I just don't think I could work a job in London. It'd just be difficult because I wouldn't be able to afford housing. One of the main arguments I see from people with this opinion is that if you have a job that's not paying you well enough to be able to live in the area the job is in, then you should either, change jobs or change locations. And I'm just like, what? No, seriously, what? What jobs? What employment? A lot of places outside London are also struggling with jobs and unemployment as well. And the idea that you should live outside London to me seems insane. That, like, wait, you have a job that's in London, but you have to live outside of London for it to be sustainable. That sounds insane. And by the way, this should apply for anywhere else in the world, because if you work in Los Angeles, you should be able to live in Los Angeles. If you work in New York City, you should be able to afford to live in New York City. You should not have to be going out of city to work a job that's in the city. Being able to live in the city that you work in should not be expensive. Your job should pay you enough to be able to live in the city that you work in. It's either that the cost of living needs to come down or your salary needs to go up, because that's insane. That shouldn't be happening. And by the way, that's not to mention that most people who have to commute to London, they say it's very expensive to commute into London and commute out of London. It's very expensive. So I'd imagine they don't like that. That's probably still bad too, and probably still has its own other problems. And there's another problem to mention in this that's very London specific, or at least British specific, because in the UK, London is really the only, like, economically viable city, because the government has only focused only on London and have deprived everywhere else in the UK. And so everyone else who's grown up outside of London is thinking, well, if I want a future or a career, I should probably, find a job in London that can make me lots of money. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, now lots of people are competing to live in London. And so obviously that's probably going to make the rent more expensive because everyone wants to live in London. Hey, if you ask me, I feel like we should make other cities across the country exactly like London. But, I'm currently not running the country right now, so can't do much about it. The other argument I find really annoying and deeply disturbing is the argument that because those jobs are low skill and therefore they are low value, and then therefore they should not pay anyone enough to be able to sustain living on. And I find that insane to say, in my opinion. And if you think those jobs are low skill and low value, then why do we have them? We should just get rid of them, right? If they're low skill and low valuable, then we won't miss them if they're just gone, right? We can get rid of grocery workers, fast food workers, baristas. We can get rid of them. If we think these jobs are so low skill and thereby low value, therefore we pay them less, then why have them if we think they're low value? We should just get rid of them, right? But you don't want to do that. You want to get a Starbucks coffee later. You want to go buy McDonald's, after work, and you also want to go Sainsbury's to go buy groceries later, right? You want your groceries, right? Just because those jobs are quote unquote low skilled and therefore means that they're low value should therefore mean those people shouldn't be paid well. To me, is absurd, because at the end of the day, people are going to those businesses, buying stuff from those businesses. Shouldn't the people who helped get you that stuff and serviced you, shouldn't they get paid enough to live? People go to fast food restaurants every day and order from them. So to me, I think it's insane to think that the people who work there shouldn't be paid a living wage. And look, I am a left winger. I would even consider myself somewhat of a socialist. And you would know that obviously I despise right wing ideals and all that. But let's ignore that for 1 second, right? Is it not insane for you to think that, you know, you can't live in the city that you work in? You just can't. You can't afford to live in the city you work. Is that not insane to you? Another argument that I've seen is that these jobs should be worked by teenagers, so 16 plus, and they should be working there part time whilst they're in school. And the idea is it's supposed to help teenagers build up, enough skills for, like, employment. And that's kind of the idea behind that. But I've always just felt like, all right, have you ever, like, if like you have a job, right? I assume you have a job, right? And I imagine you get breaks, right? And I imagine you have left your workplace to go get breaks, right? And you've walked into, like, a grocery store near where you work, or a convenience store near where you work, right? And you've noticed that the people working there aren't teenagers, right? You notice they're like fully grown adults who probably have maybe have children, right? You've seen that. Heck, just walk into a grocery store at any time. As I'm recording this, it's currently summer. I want you to walk into the closest grocery store next to you, and I want you to walk into it and tell me how many teenagers you actually notice. Because I'm willing to bet you probably there aren't that many teenagers working in a grocery store. Most of them are definitely like 30 plus at most. And this idea of of grocery stores being worked by teenagers seems feasibly impossible. It just wouldn't. They couldn't function because guess what? Teenagers go to school, and if we're including uni students in this, also still bad because guess what? They also go to uni. So what would mean these businesses would be closed during the weekdays. They would have to close during the weekdays because teenagers have school. They could not run during weekday mornings. Every grocery store is still running on a weekday. They're still running on weekday mornings, afternoons, even evenings. It's absurd to me that you think these big chains like McDonald's or a Sainsbury's could even function during weekdays. Or if you're American, Walmart. There's no way you think your local Walmart can run on a weekday when all the kids are in school. There's no way you think that. They would only have to run on weekends. And not everyone has a regular 9 to 5 job that goes Monday to Friday. Some people have Fridays off, some people have Tuesdays off, some people don't get weekends off. So it's like, it's absurd to think that teenagers should be running those jobs. It just wouldn't function. I refuse to believe that you'll be happy with your McDonald's being run by teenagers. I know for a fact, once you get off your work break, that you're gonna be so annoyed when your McDonald's is closed on a Tuesday afternoon because the teenagers are in school. And that's not something that happens in reality. Most of those jobs are ran by people who are 30 plus. One thing I've noticed with the right, especially the British right and also American as well, is this push to act as if they care about the working class. In America they might just say the middle class, but like there is this push, at least in Britain, to care about the working class. And there's usually a specific imagery they use of the working class, and I've noticed it, right? The problem is a lot of people's ideas of what working class is really just based on vibes. It really is just vibes based. Because some people think a farmer is working class and someone who's a Starbucks barista is not. Some people think a Starbucks barista is middle class and a farmer is working class, and it's just because of the vibes of their job. And it's just because when people think of farmer, they think of a fat, old, bald white dude who's like towing the grass and mowing the land themselves and actually tending to the crops and stuff and, taking care of animals. And when people are thinking of a barista, they're thinking of a blue haired woman with a bunch of piercings and tattoos. And, the customers she serves are like super rich folk. People tend to think a barista is like a really wealthy person, and then a farmer is a really poor person. It's like, that is very far from the truth. Farmers are rich. Bruv, when people think of like a farmer towing the land, farmers don't tow the land. They don't, they're not the ones who take care of the animals and stuff. That's a farmhand's job. The farmer is just the person who owns the farm. The main reason why people have these imageries of a barista and a farmer is just because of sexism. Genuinely, it just is sexism. The reason why a barista and a farmer have like such gendered attachment to them is just because a farmer is someone who works with their hands, they manage animals, they're like a commanding voice, and therefore that gets associated with masculinity. Meanwhile, the perception of a barista is of someone who serves beverages on the request of other people, and that comes across as submissive and therefore feminine. Hence why people have those kind of negative associations with a barista and a positive association with a farmer. And not to mention as well is, it's a job that's commonly associated with a uni student or a female uni student. When people talk about working class, they're talking about a farmer. They're not talking about like their local grocery worker or their postman, or they might think of the person who takes the garbage, but they're probably not gonna think of like some guy working in an office, or some guy who manages a till at an Aldi. They're not gonna think of them. They're gonna think of this farmer rather than a grocery worker or a barista or a fast food worker or a pizza delivery guy or an Uber driver. They might think, oh, those people as like, oh, those are like the uppity folks. And I'm like, no, what? At the end of the day, it's like the right don't actually care about the working class, like the actual real working class people. The right do not care about them. Like, Americans pretend to care, But the Brits, we don't. We have severe contempt for the working class. Like, genuinely. Like, Jeremy Kyle was a thing, by the way. And that was working class people. And it wasn't working class people of color. It was white working class people that were being made fun of on Jeremy Kyle. Guys, there's a reason why Nigel Farage does not closely associate with Tommy Robinson. And to me, it's either this. It's either the wages go up or the cost of living comes down, because this is impossible to sustain. This mode of economics cannot sustain itself forever. It's going to break. It's going to come to like a breaking point. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Like, society cannot function if the people working fast food restaurants or grocery workers just can't afford enough to live within the city that they work in. Back in the day, and when I mean back in the day, I do mean like 2,000 years ago, like, you could live in the city that you work in. You could live in the city that you work in and it was completely fine, no matter what job you did. And to me, this right-wing ideal of that, like, oh, if you flip burgers for a living, you shouldn't be able to afford to live in the city that you work in. And to me, it's like, okay. Let's just believe that for a second. Let's go with your idea for a second. Genuinely, if you think that these people shouldn't be paid well enough to live, then we should get rid of them. Like I said, just get rid of them. Why should they exist then? They shouldn't exist. But no, that's not what you want. If you couldn't get your double bacon cheeseburger, you'd be upset if you don't get your double bacon cheeseburger, because I know the kind of people you are. You're spoiled. You want your treats and you want them now. You know, you want your McDonald's, you want your groceries. You even want your video games. But you don't want the people who are involved in making those things possible for you to have to be able to be paid well enough to live in the city that they work in. In conclusion, I just think this opinion is really stupid, and that if you're someone who genuinely holds this opinion, I think less of you. Like, I genuinely think, like, you're someone who hates the fabric of society. Like, you're the kind of person who genuinely despises people. Like, you don't like people, and you think yourself as better than other people. Like I genuinely think if you think like this, you suck heavily. Like, you're bad. Like, you're terrible. Oh, because of your job, your life isn't worth living. You shouldn't have this. It's like, damn, that's crazy. I think that's going to be it for today's rant about opinions I see from the internet. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe, like it, share it. You can share it on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. But anyways, I will see you all in the next video that I make. See ya. She will sink your self-esteem, won't be the gal of your dreams.